Warhammer 6th Edition. Force Banquo versus Force Cherub. The Bromans have a problem. They have to deploy first. They are on the defensive. They've been caught kind of flat-footed after yesterday's big win, so having to deploy first, they've put their cannon over here on their right flank, a couple of units of spears, and then the archers over here to help protect the left flank, but they're going to send these knights, the last 6 Knights of the Lamb, come sweeping around the woods. Now remember, in our last episode, we talked about the fact that the entire northern border of this table is uncrossable. It's swampy, patchy. The Bromans also cannot escape off this portion of the board because there's a unit of skeletal spearmen somewhere along that road. That's going to be dangerous. The only way they can escape off the board is to move between the barrow and this light woods here. Now, they can move through the light woods, but remember, that slows movement by half. It's going to take a long time to get through there, meaning their only real safe route is through this little pass. So they have opted to kind of put their spearmen in the center, got to rush out there, and then the peasants will act as kind of a reserve and maybe get up there. Maybe we can weaken the enemy with these shooters before they get into position. But it's going to be a little harder this time because we have to deal with the Necromancer Lord Diobzela. He is a level 3 Death Wizard. That's going to be a problem. He has access to the couple of spells from the army list. And then this is his champion. That is the Thrall Karinsky. He is in heavy armor, he's got a shield, and he has a biting blade, so he's going to be at AP 1, and we're going to put him with this unit of 28 skeletal spearmen. Here's a unit of 23. No banners, no leaders, no champions. I planned this campaign before I painted those up. That's a bit of a hindrance, but remember, the moon is right. So if they do happen to lose a combat, the amount of losses that the undead suffer is going to be reduced by 1. That does not apply to the dire wolves or to the bats. This will be the first casualty we take. I only have 2 bat figures, so we're going to use a Quetzalcoatl as a little demonic. I don't know, familiar. This is actually one of those squishy rubber like D&D miniatures that I've just never bothered to replace because he's bright, colorful, and I like him. I did forget to mention that the captain over on the other side is the wizard, is a level 2 wizard. That's Neil McGram, and then there are a couple of champions. The spear units for the Bromans have banners and champions, and then the captain is carrying, that's Captain Leggin Man still. He's got nothing fancy, no magic items for him. Who's going to go first? The white die is for the undead, the yellow is for the Broman. So the undead do get to go first, and as usual, we'll begin with movement. The wolves and their bats are going to charge the cannon, try to take that out. That will be a huge win that'll pay big dividends down the line. They've moved up. The skeletons cannot march. That's one of the downsides of having an undead army. That takes us to the magic phase, which is where things get a little bit complicated. Unlike last time, we have a level 3 wizard, which I did this wrong. I was rolling way too many dice. But I was rolling for Neil McGram. I guess he had a little bit of a power-up. Here he is right here. He's going to try to dispel some spells. Now, the fun thing about Necromancer is he's a level 3, so he's going to have a total of 4 dice he can use to cast spells. And he's going to attempt to cast, it's basically like a haste spell. He needs a 3 or better on 2 dice. And he's going to try to cast 1 on each of these units. If he gets it, they can advance an additional 2 inches. Neil is going to try to block with 2 dice on the first and 1 die on the second. And so we simply roll the dice, and we're looking for a 3 or better. And with a 5 and a 6, this one is dispelled, so that unit does not go anywhere. And this one, we get a 6 and a 6. Neil McGram goes full, you shall not haste, although he's standing back here. Dispelling has an unlimited range, I believe, doesn't have line of sight. That does end the turn for the undead. And so after moving, our spearmen have moved up couple of inches, not all the way. We're going to hang back and let this cannon do everything it possibly can. We've got some archers here that we're going to try to whittle down the numbers before we impact. Remember, we're outnumbered almost 2 to 1 in both of these cases. So if we can wait and get these knights into play and get in a nice juicy flanking attack, we're going to take advantage of that as well. Meantime, we got to get these guys out of here. We got to clear the path so that we have a fallback retreat. It's not going to go well for our cannon, but hey, whatever. That brings us to the missile phase. So now our cannon is going to fire at these dire wolves. I did this wrong last turn, last game, last battle as well. We have to nominate a distance. We're going to estimate 5 inches. When I roll the first die on a 1 through 5, that's the amount of inches we add to the initial landing, and then the second die is how far it bounces. Because we're playing at half scale, the numbers shown on the dice will be the actual numbers. If the blue comes up a 6, we have a misfire, and we have to look at this as our roll on the misfire table. If this comes up a 6, that means, if it's not a misfire and this comes up a 6, then we don't have any bounce whatsoever. So blue die first, and we get a 4. Now remember, I declared we were shooting 5 inches, so the cannonball is going to land on the 9, which puts it right on this guy, and it's going to travel 1 inch, which will also hit this second. So it doesn't bounce clear into the bats here, but we have 2 dice to see if we do any casualties to the wolves. And with a result of a 1 and a 4, this is a strength 10 hit. So we will remove 1 of those dire wolves from the battle, and probably from the campaign as well. That takes us to the magic phase. The only spell that Neil McGrahm has, I forgot to move him up. He needed to move up into this area in order to cast his Burning Gaze, which means with no magic phase, nobody in range, there's no reason to cast any spells. We are now done with turn number 1. Heading into turn 2, we have to declare charges, which we will not. Remember that undead cannot march, so our dire wolves are closest. They're not going to be able to charge the cannon, which was what we're really hoping to do. In other words, everybody's just going to march up straight ahead. We're just going to try to get there. So 4.5 inches of movement here for the dire wolves, 2 inches for each of the spear guys, and then of course we're just going to keep these bats right behind the dire wolves. The dire wolves are essentially running as a screen for these bats. Then we go on to, now before I move these guys, we don't have any missile fire, so the next phase will be magic, and I'm going to go ahead and roll for that magic because we're going to do the same thing we did last time. Our Necromancer is going to try to cast double time on both of these 2 figures. He is going to be able to use a total of 4 dice, and his opponent is going to try to dispel with 3 dice. I think in a regular game, you would be able to say, well, I'm going to roll 2 dice and roll it, and then your opponent gets to decide how many dice he wants to use. But to keep things fresh, to keep it solo, and to keep it fair, I'm just going to go ahead and roll. It'll be a pair of dice here for each of these guys, and with a 10 versus a 6, these guys are going to move once, and then here we are doubling them up, and we get a 5 and a 5, which means once again, our Lord of Light, our Neil McGrahm, is going to be dispelling both of Diob Zila's attempts. And after movement, the situation will look a little something like this. I have not pre-measured the distance between the wolves and the cannon. I'm trying to keep them just far enough away that they can't get blasted by grape shot. And again, the cannon can't really pre-measure either, so the cannon is going to go ahead and fire regular round shot this turn, but I am getting a little ahead of myself. We have some considerable movement to do on the part of the Empire, the Broman Empire. And so after movement, the Knights have continued their sweep around the Light Woods. The Archers moved up a little bit. They actually gave up half of their movement to expand their ranks by 2 on either side. When they shoot, they will get to fire 8 dice instead of just the 6 for being in double rows. Our Peasants moved up a little bit, turned 90 degrees, and moved a little bit further out of the way. They're just trying to clear the escape route for any of these spearmen that break so they can get out, and then we'll rush the Peasants up to fill the gap if we can. The only guys that didn't move, and the 2 spearmen, they just moved up a little bit. The only guys that didn't move, and I also remembered to move Neil McGrahm. He's going to kind of slide in next to the woods there, and he should be close enough because, I believe, because he advanced, he can't cast a spell. He's too busy hoofing it, trying to leg it and get there in time to get out of the way of the Archers. Next turn, we'll be able to take advantage of his spell casting. We don't have any today. That means the last thing we have to do is fire the cannon. As I mentioned, we are going to have to forego the grape shot. I'm concerned we're going to fire and miss. We're just going to fire straight through. We're going to declare that our first, put the white die down. We're going to declare, well, we have to say how many inches it is, right? Let's say we're going to shoot 3 inches. That takes us to right here. and just straight ahead, trying to clip the bats as well. So our first D6 means that first shot is going to land 7 inches away, and at 7 inches from the barrel, that first shot is going to land on this dire wolf right here in the second rank. The first rank escapes, and then how far does it bounce? On a 2, it will bounce 2 more inches, and we will be able to clip one of these, and we'll just say this guy right here. Now the bats have they have 5 wounds. How many wounds do the wolves have? The dire wolves each have a single wound, so that's not an issue. But for those bat swarms, they have 5 wounds apiece. That means we make 1 save for the guy in front. And he makes it. Wow, these dire wolves are crazy good. Then we have to figure out that great cannon actually does D6 wounds to the feathered serpent. And so that serpent is going to have to make 3 saves. And for every one, now he fails all 3 of them. So that serpent is knocked down by 3. If he takes 2 more wounds, he'll be out of the fight. But until then, I believe he's at 100%. Hey, that ain't nothing. Except that is the end of the turn. So we move on to the next turn. The dire wolves are going to charge. Meaning that having shifted over just that little bit, these guys are unfortunately the victim of the charge. Right? So the dire wolves are going to impact, and we'll line them up as best we can. The dire wolves are going to attack, but it's not time for melee yet. That means we're going to have to swing. The bats are going to charge, and the bats unfortunately only have a movement of 8, so they are going to be just a bit outside. Back over here, the mob of boys, to do this in the proper order, our Necromancer is only going to move up 2 inches to right there. He knows that, and his facing is a little off, forgive me. He knows the spears are each going to move 2 inches, so once again, we're in a situation where I will measure 2 inches, and this is what I do kind of off screen just to mark it. There's my 2 inches that I know for sure the guys are going to move, but we have to figure out our spell casting. So once again, we're going to roll 2d6. I really want these guys to move, so we're going to try to well, wait a minute. I want to hold these guys back. So but the Bromans want to hold these guys on the right flank back, so they're going to dispel with 2 dice over there. They're only going to dispel with 1 dice, the guys in the foreground. So let's roll the guys in the foreground first. And finally, we get a 4 versus 7. The guys in the foreground will actually be moving up 4 full inches. They get the hot foot spell. The guys in the background, it's going to be 6 versus 3, so they fail to move up as well. And after movement, the table looks a little something like this. We'll point our Necromancer the right way. I should also point out, I get a little sloppy with the sabbat bases in these back rows. The important thing at this point is be aware that I use the sabbat base itself as my definitive, here's where the front rank begins and ends. And then if my back row gets a little sloppy, I tend to think of these 2 guys as, they're stragglers. I can take 2 casualties off, and then when I take that 3rd, now I'm losing the full rank bonus. So they're kind of like just extra hit points. And likewise over here, hey, they're undead, they're not tight. It's fine. We've done missile fire, which we didn't have any. We've done magic. Now it's time to do a little bit of melee. I have 5 wolves. They get +1 attack on a turn when they charge. That means 10 dice. Weapon strength of 3 versus 3, but strength of 4 versus 3 means we are hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s. Taking out the misses for hitting on 4s, and we only get 4 hits in this first round of combat, but we're wounding on 3s. We get 3 wounds. The spearmen have light armor and a shield. They're saving on 5s, but with the strength of 4, that's reduced by 1. I always forget that. So that means they're going to be saving on 6s. And with a pair of 6s, hey, that ain't too bad. They're going to lose a total of 2 fellas. We've got a total of 10 attacks with the spearmen. They're hitting on 3s. And then this is indeed, here's our Captain Legan Manstill. He is going to be hitting on, the red dice are hitting on 3s. The blue die, with a weapon skill of 5, will be hitting on a 3. And we need to use a different color die because he is also going to be hitting with a strength of 4. And our blue die he will be wounding on 3. And so that is a wound, and the dire wolves have a save of... They do not, so we'll take one off the back row. Then we have to roll for these. These will be wounding on strength. The spearmen have a strength of 3 versus toughness of 3, means we are wounding on 4s, and we get an additional 1, 2, 3 hits. So at the end of the combat, the score is going to be 2 for the wolves. Then the Bromans are going to be at a total score of 4, plus 1 for the flag, plus 1 for the full extra rank. So that's a total of 6 versus 2. We remove 4 more of these dire wolves. For movement, our mob of peasants wheels in place. Neil McGram gets out of the way, and our knights continue their long sweeping maneuver around this small copse of trees. That's it for movement. We don't have any charges. We're just going to wait. We are now going to move on to magic, and we are now in position to cast Withering Gaze. We are going to call the fires of heaven down upon this unit right here. You do have to worry about miscasts on this guy, but he's got to roll all 3 dice. Looking for 5 or better. We get a 13, and you got to like his chances. Neil has been tearing it up with the dispels, but again, with a 16 to 13, just nothing's going to happen here. That spell fizzles out, which takes us to shooting, and we'll do the boring one first. That's going to be the archers firing at these spearmen. They're going to be hitting on 5s, and with 1, 2, 3 hits all together, get those out of the way, and we will roll wounding on 4s. That's just 1 wound, so they lose 1 guy. And but he does get a save with light armor. He saves on a 6 and he fails. So just 1, but we'll take it. The next thing we do is the shooting here, and in this case, I have a flamer template. We are too close. These guys are within 2 inches. If we try to declare we're firing at 0, we need to roll snake eyes, and that's not going to happen. So we drop our flamer template down in such a way that we are going to be hitting both of these 2, and it's going to do a strength 4 hit at -2 saves. It automatically does the strength 4 hit. They're firing grape shot, basically. So I'm going to roll to see if this guy here on the left takes his 4th hit, and wounding on a 3. So he takes his wound, and then he doesn't get a save. The bats have a strength of 2. That means it's anything but a 1. And with a 6, this other bat takes its 2nd wound. And that's it for shooting. The next thing we have to do is melee. We have a melee right next door. And this one's going to be 10 regular attacks for the spearmen. They have an initiative of 3, so they attack first. And all we need to do is get 1 hit, and that's going to be the end of the dire wolves. Immune to psychology means that these bats don't have to make a morale check. As you can see, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hits. Not a bad roll. Maybe 7. I don't think I rolled that one, though. So 6 hits, and you got to be kidding me. That is pretty astonishing. You gotta be kidding me. I rolled D6 and rolled a 7 total. No wounds, but I have not rolled for the big boss man yet. Legan Manstill is going to strike out, and he's going to hit big. We roll to see if we wound, and a strength of 4 versus a toughness of 3 means wounding on 3s. That wolf is going to stick around, and he gets to counterattack. How about that? And with a miss, that means not a whole lot. I think the wolf will die next time. I have to check this because it occurs to me that the actual score of this combat, I know some of you are reaching for the keyboard, the actual score is going to be 2 to the Bromans, right? Because we have a full rank of spears. We have the flag, that's +2 wounds. That means, because the guys are undead, they do 2 additional wounds, which will finally wipe out the dire wolves as a going concern. Son of a gun, I forgot the dire wolves cause fear. These guys have to make a leadership check. And with a Snake Eyes, they roll beneath their leadership. Then bear in mind, they're using the leadership of Leg and Man still. He's got a leadership of 8. So that's our check to see if I had to rewind things almost like a turn and a half. They passed it. We did it right this time. We rolled under to pass the check. Good. Now our bats charge home. Because they are closer than half their movement, the cannon does not get one last shot at the bats. They are going to strike home. And this time, the crew of the cannon has to pass a leadership check. And they roll a 3, which means they'll stand and fight. It's probably not smart for them. So we bring the crew to the fore, and they're going to fight basically a 3-on-3 when we get to the melee round. But we're not there yet. We have to move our couple of big units of spear guys. And because he wants to cast another spell, our Necromancer can only move up to there. Our first unit of skeletons is going to move to here, and our second unit of skeletons will move to here and pivot somewhat because they do have to do magic. And once again, we will be rolling 2v2 and 2v1. In this case, we want to move the farther, we want to prevent the farther guys from moving. So if we do this properly and we roll, we need a 10 to stop them this time. And Neil fails, so these guys will get the extra 2 inches, and these guys down here, 7v2, they will also get to move the extra 2 inches. So our battlefield winds up looking a little something like this. We got a nice protected flanks, I guess, but we got to fight this melee right down here. I believe that with a total of 5 attacks, each of the 3 bat figures on the table gets to roll all 5. Correct me if I'm wrong, they've taken 5 wounds. Do they only roll 10 dice? I'm going to roll all 15. That's the Broman's fault for not focusing on wiping out one of those guys. The good news for the Bromans is that the bats only have a weapon skill of 2. So a 2 versus 3 means they're only hitting on 4s, and all of these 3s that they rolled are going to go bye-bye. That's still an awful lot of hits. They also only have a strength of 2 versus a toughness of 3, meaning they will only be wounding on 4s, and again, we pull off all of these 3s, but there are still 3 hits left over, and with that, now this is not an overrun attack, but it does kill the entire crew without even a chance to strike back. That means the cannon is virtually useless for the siege. All of the trained personnel have been eliminated. That does also end the first half of this 4th turn. Moving on to the Broman half, can these guys turn to face? I think that's all they can do. Do you see the conundrum the Bromans face here? They are protecting a flank over here. They're badly outnumbered by these skeletons. I think we have to do it. I think we gotta... Well, these guys can't move. We already said that. Do we charge with the knights? Do we take on that large of a unit? We're going to be badly outnumbered. Or do we just wait until we make contact? If these guys... The battlefield is just too tight. We got lots of guys, but they're in too many mixed units. We don't have enough maneuver room. We're going to hold those knights for one more turn, see what develops. Our archers have the potential to give these guys a little bit of assistance. If we can just knock off 2 skeletons and get rid of one of those ranks, we'll be in good shape. We are now only 6 inches away. That means we're back up to weapon skill 3. That means, or ballistic skill 3. That means we will be hitting on 4s. And that does buy us, well, it doesn't actually buy us anything. We get 3 hits out of this. And we're wounding on 4s, and we get 2 hits, and then we are saving on 6s. No saves means we did it. We have denied the skeletons. Well, first of all, we've taken a couple more off the board, but we've also denied them that rank bonus on this next turn. But before we end turn 4, we also have a little bit of magic. And with a result of an 8 versus more than 8, that gaze ain't gonna do nothing. Moving on to turn number 5, I'm a little confused. For movement, I think the bats can pivot. Now, they have a movement of 8. They can fly. And I don't know if they can fly over enemies or not. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to pivot them, and we're going to fight a battle down here. These spearmen are close enough to jump on top of, they're going to, quote, charge. I don't know if it actually counts as charging, but they are within 2 inches. So they will make contact with the Broman spear unit. And that's going to be slightly outnumbered. This unit can advance 2 inches to try to get nearer to the knights. Our boy here, he can move up another 2 inches to here and still get off a spell. And he's going to try to get these guys to move up an additional 2 inches. He is going to use all 4 of his dice on that. And with a result of, what is that, a 14? 30, 14, there's no chance of dispelling. So our unit up here is going to be able to swing around, and our general gets to within just a couple of inches of the horses. And now those horses are going to have to commit. This game is crazy, isn't it? I'm getting rid of my spear guy. He was just proxying for us. I had a sword skeleton proxying for a spear skeleton, but with the casualties, I can swap him out for a proper spear guy. And that's going to be the end of movement and magic for the undead. Let's do that combat. In this case, because they did not charge, the bats will attack second. That means we go with initiative, I think, or can you only make contact on a charge? I'm not going to look it up. I'm going to wait for you guys to correct me on that score. The bats have an initiative of 1, which means the spear guys get to go first. And as usual, we've got a back rank with 5 guys in it. We've got a front rank with 4 guys in it. Well, one of them has 2 attacks because he's a champion. And then we also have that leader with a weapon skill of 5. Weapon skill of 3, attacking weapon skill of 2 means we're going to be hitting on 3s. That was a 6. So we pull out the 1s and 2s. Captain Manstill fails to prove his mettle once again. All of these are going to be wounding on 3s. We are going to get just 3 wounds altogether. And that will do 1 wound on each figure. So that will eliminate the winged serpent who is guiding the bats. And then we drop a second wound on the bat here on the right, and the first wound on the bat here on the left. And then the bats get to counterattack. Now, because there's only 2 figures, they're only going to get 10 attacks, and they're only going to be hitting on 5s. But they get a really good roll. Hitting on 5s, wounding on, well, not very strong. They only have a strength of 2, so they're only going to be wounding on 5s. They get 2 wounding hits. Saving on 5s means they do 1 wound. So 1 wound, and that's it for the bats. Meanwhile, we've got 3 wounds, 4, 5. Difference of 4 means we do 2 more wounds to each of these figures, and they go to 3 wounds to this guy. And, oh, see, this is, my depth perception is completely shot, guys. And then, so we've got 2 wounds and 1 wound left on that guy. And we have to fight another round of combat next round. Let's see, so 2 and 3, but they're both still in the fight. Which brings us to the only other melee combat we've got. And in this case, the skeletons did charge into combat with the Bromans. But before we run that combat, do these spearmen even stand their ground? They need to roll a 7 or less. And on an 8, they fail, which means they're going to respond by running away. And they will run 2d6 divided by 2, 3.5 inches away. And I know we're supposed to check that as soon as the charge is declared, but we're definitely moving these guys up. So that's how things are going to stand. Here in the bottom half of the 5th inning, we got to declare charges. The Knights of the Lamb back there will charge. They got to commit. We got to wipe out as many of these skeletons as we can so that our allies and the other forces don't have to deal with them. That's it for charging. Now we check rally fleeing troops. Remember, these guys were scared off by the charging skeletons. They need a 7 or less. With a 4, they'll turn around, but that's all they can do. The Knights get stuck in back here. The only other movement we've got is this unit of peasants who will move up to help these spearmen or the bowmen, whoever gets charged next. For turn 5's magic phase, Neil McGrahm tries to cast a Fiery Rebuke on the Necromancer. He uses all of his dice and gets a grand total of 13. That's not too bad, but the Necromancer gets 4 dice to dispel and fails with an 8, meaning he takes D6 strength 4 hits. It's only going to be 1 hit, and he's going to pass the wound check on that. Bowmen step to the fore. 8 of them hitting on 4s are going to get just 2 hits. Wounding on 4s, they'll get 2 wounds, and then saving on 6s, 2 of the skeletons go bye-bye. The knights have charged. The blue dice are the knights. All of these attack dice hit on 3s, but the blue dice will have a different wound number, so it works out well for them. The blue dice have a +2 to their strength, meaning the blue dice wound on 2s, the red dice on 3s. We get a total of 3 wounding hits, saving on 6s, just 1 save. 2 skeletons die in the attack. And now the skeletons get to counterattack. They do have their Iron Thrall in there. We're going to roll the white die for him. The blue dice hit on 4s, the white die on 3s. Sorry about that, little bowman. Taking out the misses, that's a lot of hits right there. There is no difference in the strength. It's everybody's strength 3 versus a toughness of 3. Wounding on 4s and saving on, I believe it's 2 up. Let me check. Well, yeah, let me check that. Indeed, it does. The Bromans are going to have a total score of 2. The skeletons will have a total score of 1, 2, 3 bonuses for the ranks, plus they outnumber. Their total is 4, meaning they have won this combat by 2. The knights have a leadership of 8 and have to make a successful check. They roll a 9 and they fail, meaning they have to escape. They will roll 3 dice to see how far they ride away, and they will ride 13 inches away. The skeletons will pursue 7 inches, cutting all that in half because 15 millimeter. Leaving the table state something like this, it occurs to me the riders didn't pass a leadership check to see if they even had the guts to charge. With a result of a 3, they did. We don't need to retcon anything. The skeletons are happy to take the free movement chasing these guys down, and of course, the knights will have to pass a leadership check just to turn around on the next turn, which we may not want to do. We may just take the free movement. Although having these spear skeletons sweeping around could cause all kinds of problems for our heroes. So we dropped the red gem of shame on those knights. I don't think they got far enough away to avoid the charge. But for now, we turn our attention to this combat down here. 11 total attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s, and the bats get no saves. So every 4 up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's enough to completely destroy the bats. Let's start turn 6 with a mea culpa. It occurs to me that the farmers and this unit of spearmen should have tested for panic when this unit was broken and ran away. We'll get those cascading tests down right in this turn, I promise. In the meantime, we're going to start way off in the distance where our knights are being charged. They're only 3.5 inches away from this unit of spearmen. And then just to declare, these guys are both charging straight ahead. These guys have a wide enough frontage. They have to charge both of these units, which they want to do anyway, both the farmers and the spearmen, because it forces both of those units to make a fear check. The knights are already running away, so they have to flee, and they're going to flee a total of, I rolled an 8, that's 4 more inches, and then the skeletons will follow up by pursuing their charge distance of another 4 inches in hot pursuit. Then we have to roll for these 2 units. We're going to check the red dice will be for the peasants. They have a leadership of 6. The blue die will be for the spearmen who have a leadership of 7. The peasants run away. The spear stand their ground. And because the peasants are going to flee, the archers have to make a panic check. And with a 6, they will succeed. And I think these guys have to make one too, and with an 11, they're going to run away as well. And finally, for movement, we are going to bring our Necromancer around in this direction. He wants to be close enough to give the undead a little bit of a boost or a power-up. Because he marched this turn, he can't use any magic. That's all right. He's also out of the line of sight of his opponent over here. He doesn't want to get blasted again by that holy blessing of cleansing fire. The skeletons have the only melee attack. They get 12 dice. They are 6 across, 2 deep, hitting on 4s, taking out the misses. 5 hits altogether, wounding on 4s. They only get 1 hit. That's okay. That 1 hit is also saved by a man in light armor. The Bromans only get to attack back, hitting again on 4s. They're going to do a total of more hits. And wounding on 4s, they'll get a total of 2 wounding hits, of which the skeletons save 1. So 1 skeleton goes down in a pile of bones. Calculating the results is interesting. The Bromans are going to score 1 for the casualty, 2, 3 for ranks, and 4 because they have a banner. The skeletons score 1, 2 for the extra ranks, plus 1 for having more guys in the fight, for a total of 3. That means the Bromans, though badly outnumbered, win by 1, and that's going to take off 1 more skeleton. The fight will continue on the next turn. A turn in which we have no charges. Can these guys rally on an 8? With a 6, they can. Can the peasants rally on a 6? They cannot. They will flee an additional 3 inches at half speed through the woods. Can our Knights of the Lamb find their guts? And with a result of a 7, they can. They have a leadership of 8. Old Neil's going to move up to 2 inches so he can take another pot shot with the burning gaze at his necromantic foe. The archers are not going to move. They're going to go ahead and reform. I take that back. Why don't we just go ahead and wheel them 4 inches? We'll bring them around a little something like this. They can't shoot this turn, but if these guys can hold out for just 1 more turn, then we'll be able to hit them on 3 sides and maybe wipe this unit out, which would be a lovely little coup. Meantime, Neil McGrahm casts a burning gaze, and he muffs it. Not only that, but he rolls snake eyes. Forcing a roll on the miscast table, he gets a result of a 9. A massive vortex of power drains away. Any remaining power dice held by the player are removed, and the magic phase ends. So that's just really effectively a nothing happens. Now we look at this melee. Same rules apply. 10 dice for the Bromans attacking first, hitting on 4s. They're only going to get 3 hits this time around. They need to score a couple of wounds. Wounding on 4s, they get a pair of them. Saving on 6s, nothing doing. So the skeletons will lose 2 more, and they'll lose 1 of their rank bonuses. But they do get to attack back with 12 dice hitting on 4s, and they don't have much more luck on the attack roll with 5 hits. Wounding on 4s, they do way better there. But saving on 5s means 3 wounds for the Bromans. Not a great result. The final result is going to be, for the Bromans, 2 wounds, plus a rank, plus the banner is 4. The skeletons have 3 plus a rank, plus outnumber for 5. The Bromans take a leadership check at -1. They need a 6. And with a 4, they'll stand their ground, and they really needed that one. They have some help coming, but it won't arrive for another full turn. We move on to the undeads, turn number 7. Or do we on a 5 or a 6? The game is over. Next turn, we'll end the game at the start of turn 8 on a 3 or better. No charges, just moving into position. Our Necromancer will race over to here. You'll see why here in a few turns. And then the undead will advance, but they're too far to charge. You know, come to think of it, I suppose we should check that, shouldn't we? Our Necromancer is going to roll. He gets the auto success unless we can get a pair of 6s on Neil's part. He gets the auto fail, so yeah, we can move the 4 inches. I should have rolled before I moved him, but hey, that's a lot of figures to move. It's all right. We have to do this combat down here. Probably would have been a good idea to do some lap around attacks for the skeletons since they've already lost their 2nd rank, but I forgot, and I don't really understand how lapping around works. I don't like it, so I just never remember and never do it. The higher initiative goes to the Bromans, who are hitting on 4s. They're going to get just 4 hits on that one. A little worse than average. They will be wounding on 4s, and they're going to get just 1 wound and no save. So that's 1 skeleton. Meanwhile, the skeletons still get 12 attacks, hitting on 4s. And they're not going to do a whole lot better. 5 hits, wounding on 4s. Ooh, 4 wounds, saving on 5s and 6s. 3 more go down, and that might be the end of this spear unit, because they are going to lose this combat by not just the 2. Well, let's see. It's going to be a total score of 1-2 to the Bromans. They don't have that rear rank anymore. We will be at, for the skeletons, we'll be at 1 for the outnumbering, 1 for the extra rank, and then, so a total of 5 versus 2 means leadership check at -3, and with a result of a 3, that becomes a 6. That is a successful attack. The 3 becomes a 6, they need a 7 or less, they roll less, and somehow, miraculously, they stand their ground for just 1 more turn, and what an important turn that is. To start that turn, the peasants have to try to gain their nerve. They need to roll a 6 or better, and they don't get it, so they're going to race another 1.5 inches to the edge of the woods, and if they don't pass their next rally check, they are going to run off the battlefield, and, oh, no, I take it back. We have to roll to see how far they run, don't we? They're going to run 6 inches. They run off into the fields, and they will not be available. They will filter back. They've had enough of this. This stuff is scary. They are out of the campaign. They won't be available for the final siege of the Dark Lord's castle. Now we declare charges, and we have 2. The archers are going to attempt to charge into the rear flank of this unit. They need a 7 or less to do that, and with an 11, they're not gonna. Then this unit will try to charge the flank, and again we need a 7 or less, and with an 11, they're not gonna. Thanks for the help, guys. And what about these knights needing an 8? Can they charge? With a 6, at least somebody cares enough to reach out and touch some skeletons. How about the last bit of movement? How about Legan pursuing the Necromancer around to here, just 2 inches, firing off his burning gaze, hoping to take that guy out. He rolls a total score of 9. The Necromancer flings his arms wide, throws up a shield, and he gets a total score of 8, meaning he takes another 2, 4. Yeah, wow, look at that. No double 6s, no double 1s. He's going to take D6. He takes a total of 6. Ooh, that's pretty bad. 6 D4 wounds. These are going to be wounding him on, let's see, 4 versus 3. I think it's wounding on 3s. Hey, look, 3 6s means the Necromancer goes down, and things just got ugly. I'll tell you what was going on there. The Necromancer was really hoping to race around the woods and get to safety so he could be a part of that last battle. He is more than willing to accept the fact that his boys are, they're doing really well, but this raises an interesting question that I haven't faced before. What happens when your lead spellcaster chickens out or gets demolished? This unit is led by the Thrall. It immediately takes D6 wounds. 6 more guys crumble to dust because they no longer have that Necromancer. Probably should have moved into melee and fought this guy hand to hand. What is worse for the skeletons, this other unit down here does not have a champion. It does not have a leader. It immediately crumbles to dust. It's got no one to boss it around, and that is a huge development. I can't believe I let that happen. What a colossal blunder on my part. I swear I'm not trying to bias this in favor of my Bromans just because they got the white and yellow tabards. We do have to fight this battle, and I think this kind of demonstrates it a little bit because this is not much of a fair fight. The knights have charged in. They're hitting on 3s. They're going to get 3 hits, and once again, because they charged this turn, 2 of these guys are going to be, we'll call it the blue ones, are at +2. These dice wound on anything but a 1. These dice wound on a, these are the horses attacking on a 4. They're only going to score 2 successes. For their part, we are going to be able to roll 12 attacks for the skeletons, and all of these will be hitting on 4s. And the skeletons do their Vampire Lord proud, landing a total of 7 hits. Can they do any damage? Wounding on 4s. They do okay on that score, landing 4, but these saves are brutal, man. These saves are going to be, because they've got heavy armor, shield, and tabard. We're looking for 1s to find out. They actually do 2 wounds to these guys. And now, things get interesting. The total tally here for the Bromans is only going to be 2 points. They are outnumbered. The skeletons still have 2 additional ranks. So the skeletons are going to win this fight. Okay, so the casualties are a wash. The skeletons win by 1, 2, 3, and now these knights have to check their morale on a -3. That's going to be a total failure. They're going to ride away a total of just 3 inches, and the skeletons are going to pursue 2d6, just an inch and a half. So fortunately, man, if they had rolled just a little bit higher, just a single 6 here, then they would have overwhelmed the knights. As it is, the knights have an inch and a half of wiggle room. This being the start of turn number 8, we're going to end the game on a score of 3 or better. The Bromans lose their cannon, 10 spearmen, all of the peasants that they had liberated, and 2 of the Knights of the Lamb. The Vampire Lord loses his Necromancer, all of his bats, all of his dire wolves, and most of his skeletons. As you can see, we're going to allow these 17 plus the Iron Thrall to participate in our final penultimate battle. And I think for these guys, these Knights of the Lamb are going to make a leadership check to see whether or not they die of shame and if they are counted as casualties or survivors. They need to roll an 8 or less. With a result of we'll re-roll that one, I guess. With a result of a 7, they will be able to buck up and participate Buttercup. That's going to conclude our fight for the day. Kind of a long one, but kind of an exciting one. An interesting asymmetric matchup. Until next time, I'm praying for you.